The sun was just a tired ember sinking behind the red mesas when Eli Warren found the boy. He was riding home from town, the trail long and quiet, the kind of silence that presses on your ribs. His horse, Dusty, snorted and slowed when they spotted movement near a cluster of junipers. At first, Eli thought it was a coyote, but when he got closer, he saw small, bare feet, scraped and bleeding. The boy couldn't have been more than 8, his dark hair tangled, his eyes wide and wild like an animal cornered. He wore a thin deerskin shirt and nothing else but a necklace made of carved bone and turquoise beads. "Easy there, son," Eli said softly, sliding off his horse. "You hurt?" The boy didn't answer. He just watched Eli with suspicion, trembling, ready to bolt. Eli could see he was starving, ribs showing through his chest like kindling. The cowboy reached into his saddlebag, pulled out some jerky, and placed it on a rock between them. Then he backed away. "Ain't gonna hurt ya. Eat if you're hungry." For a long moment, the boy didn't move. Then, with hesitant steps, he approached the rock and snatched the jerky. He chewed fast, almost choking. Eli smiled faintly. "That's it. Take your time." The boy's eyes flicked up once, uncertain. "You got a name?" Eli asked. The boy shook his head. Or maybe he didn't understand English. Either way, he was alone, and frightened enough that it stirred something deep in Eli's chest, something he hadn't felt since he buried his own wife and daughter 5 winters ago. When the stars began to spill across the sky, Eli built a small fire. He wrapped the boy in a spare blanket and let him rest. Somewhere in the dark, coyotes howled, and Eli kept his rifle close. He didn't know it yet, but saving that boy was about to draw a line between life and death, and by morning, the West would no longer be the same. By dawn, the boy was still sleeping, curled up like a pup beside the ashes of the fire. Eli cooked some beans over the coals and poured himself coffee from the blackened pot. The air smelled of dust and mesquite. When the boy finally stirred, Eli noticed bruises on his shoulders and a strange mark on his arm, a burn shaped like a sun, with 4 rays curling outward. Eli frowned. That wasn't a scar from nature. It was deliberate. "Someone done this to you?" he asked, pointing gently. The boy pulled the blanket tighter and turned away. Eli sighed. "All right, you don't gotta talk. We'll get you some food, clean clothes, and then figure out where you belong." He helped the boy onto Dusty and rode toward his ranch, a wide stretch of land near the Cimarron River, bordered by cottonwoods and old fence posts. He'd built the place with his own hands after leaving the cavalry. The war had ended, but he carried its ghosts. When they reached the ranch house, his hired hand, a burly man named Samuel Pike, came out of the barn. "What in God's name you got there, Eli?" "Found him half dead in the desert. Native boy. Looks like he's been through hell." Pike spat into the dirt. "You bringin' that trouble here? You know what the locals'll say." Eli shot him a look sharp enough to cut. "He's a child, Sam. You think I'm gonna leave him out there to die?" Sam muttered under his breath, but said no more. Eli brought the boy inside, gave him water, soap, and one of his daughter's old shirts. The boy's eyes softened a little as he looked around. The pictures, the quilts, the warmth of the hearth. It was as if he hadn't seen a home in a long time. When Eli handed him a bowl of stew, the boy whispered something, low, shaky, in a language Eli didn't understand. "What's that?" Eli asked. The boy pointed toward the north. Then, with his small fingers, drew a circle in the air, the same shape as the burn mark on his arm. Eli's skin crawled. Something about that mark, and the way the boy kept glancing toward the horizon, made the air feel heavier. And just before dusk, while Eli was fixing the fence, he saw movement far away. Shadows on horseback, standing still at the ridge. Watching, Eli stood by the fence post, squinting into the orange glow of the dying sun. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. But no, there they were. 3 figures on horseback, just silhouettes against the ridge, unmoving, their horses outlined by the dim light. He felt the same tingle he used to get before ambushes during the war, that primal sense of being watched. He slowly set his hammer down, his hand resting near his revolver. The wind carried faint sounds, a distant drumbeat, low and rhythmic. Then, silence again. When he blinked, the riders were gone. By the time he got back to the house, the boy was sitting on the porch, staring north again. His little hands gripped the railing, knuckles white. Eli sat down beside him. "You seen those riders too?" he asked softly. The boy nodded once. Then he pressed his small palm over the burn mark on his arm and whispered something like a prayer. Eli didn't understand the words, but he recognized the tone, fear mixed with guilt. Inside, Sam Pike was pacing the floor, his face tight. Eli, I ain't comfortable with this. You saw them, didn't you? Injuns. They've been watching the ranch since noon. I saw, Eli said. Could be scouts looking for the boy's people. Sam shook his head. Or could be the ones who want him dead. You ever think of that? Eli glanced at the boy again, who was now sitting silent in the doorway. Ain't gonna hand him over to anyone till I know who's who. That night, a storm rolled in, lightning clawing the sky, thunder booming across the plains. Eli checked the stables twice, made sure the doors were bolted, and set his rifle near his bed. Around midnight, he woke to the sound of footsteps outside. Slow. Careful. He reached for his gun and moved to the window. In a flash of lightning, he saw figures again, 5 of them this time, standing by the gate. Their faces were painted, their eyes glinting like mirrors. Eli opened the door, the rifle steady in his grip. Who's there? He called. No answer. Only the wind and the crack of thunder. When the next bolt lit up the yard, the figures were gone again, but the front gate now stood wide open, swinging back and forth. And beside the porch steps, something had been left behind. A small totem carved from bone, with a sun's symbol etched into its chest. The same symbol that burned the boy's arm. By morning, the storm had cleared, but the land felt different, quieter, heavier. The air smelled like rain and ashes. Eli found the boy sitting by the hearth, clutching the bone totem. He was crying silently, though his face showed no tears, only that hollow stare children get when they've seen too much. Hey, Eli said, crouching beside him. What's this mean, huh? They your people. The boy looked up, then drew his hand across his throat in a swift motion, a warning. Eli frowned. They want to hurt you? The boy nodded. Sam Pike, overhearing, cursed under his breath. I told you, Eli. We should ride into town and let the sheriff deal with this. Ain't our problem. Eli stood. You think the sheriff's gonna help? The law don't care about native kids. They'd throw him in a cage, or worse. He stays. Sam muttered. Then we're as good as dead. That evening, Eli saddled Dusty and rode toward the ridge, hoping to find where the riders had gone. The land stretched endlessly, brush, dust, and wind-swept silence. But halfway through the canyon, he found something that made his blood run cold. Tracks, small footprints, the same size as the boys, but next to them, drag marks, as if someone had been pulled through the sand. And beside them, the remains of a campfire with bones still smoldering. Eli crouched, touching one of the charred bones. It was human. Then he saw the carvings on a nearby rock, symbols like suns, circles, and what looked like chains. Beneath them, painted in crimson pigment, was a handprint, small, like a child's. The boy's hand. When Eli rode back home, night had already swallowed the plains. He burst through the door and called out. Sam. The boy. He froze. The house was dark. The table overturned. The lamp shattered. And on the floor, blood. Not much, but enough. Then, from the shadows, the boy appeared. His face streaked with dirt, his hands trembling. He held Eli's knife, the blade slick with red. Eli knelt slowly. Son, what happened? The boy shook his head violently and pointed toward the barn. Eli ran. Inside the barn, Sam Pike was hanging from a rafter by a rope, eyes open wide, tongue swollen. His boots dangled inches from the ground and burned into the wood beside him, the same sun symbol again. Eli stood frozen beneath the hanging body, rainwater dripping through the barn roof, tapping like clock hands against the dirt. Sam's eyes stared blankly toward the doorway, his face twisted in something between fear and disbelief. Eli's breath came slow, heavy. God help me, he muttered, cutting Sam down. He checked for a pulse even though he knew there was none. The boy stood at the doorway, the knife still in his hand. His small chest heaved. Eli approached carefully, palms raised. You didn't do this, did you, son? The boy shook his head, eyes wide. Then he dropped the knife and backed away, trembling. Eli crouched, picking up the weapon. The blood on it was dry. He turned toward Sam's body again. Something was off. The cut on Sam's shirt, the bruises on his neck, it wasn't from struggle. It was ritual. The symbol on the wood confirmed it. Whoever killed him wanted it seen. Eli sighed through his teeth and looked at the boy. You brought something here, didn't you? Whatever's after you, they ain't stopping. The boy whispered something faint. One word, maybe two. Eli couldn't catch it, but it sounded like Toka Sura. What's that mean? He asked. The boy only pointed north again, toward the open desert. By sunrise, Eli buried Sam near the cottonwoods, marking the grave with a wooden cross. The boy stood beside him, silent. As they walked back to the house, Eli noticed smoke on the horizon. Black, thick, rising from somewhere far off. Maybe a camp. Maybe worse. He spent the rest of the day preparing, boarding up the windows, checking ammo, and packing supplies. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew it wasn't human vengeance alone. That night, as he sat by the fire, he finally asked, "Son, what's your name?" The boy hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper, said, "Kaya." Eli nodded slowly. "Kaya. All right." Kaya's voice trembled. "Tokasura, bad men. From the mountain. They take children, make them burn." He pressed his hand against the mark on his arm again. "Me too." Eli felt his gut twist. "You escaped?" The boy nodded. "They come back." A sound interrupted them, a low, droning hum that didn't belong in the wild. Eli stood, grabbed his rifle, and stepped outside. The night was still, no wind, no bugs, no movement. Just that hum, faint but pulsing, like something alive under the ground. Then it stopped. When Eli turned back, the fire inside the house had gone out. Kaya was gone. Eli called his name, his voice echoing across the barren yard. "Kaya, boy, where are you?" No answer, just the restless rustle of the night. He grabbed a lantern and followed the boy's small footprints leading toward the riverbank. They weaved between the cottonwoods, past the old fence, and down toward the shallow water. That's when he saw it, another totem, half buried in the mud. Only this one was cracked open, hollowed out, with something glimmering inside, a small silver medallion. Eli wiped it clean and squinted at the engraving, a U.S. Army insignia. He froze. What the hell? A memory sparked, stories he'd heard years ago about cavalry units experimenting with assimilation camps. Native children taken from their tribes to be remade, branded, and used for something darker. Work the army never wanted on record. And the sun symbol, it wasn't tribal. It was military. He barely had time to process it when he heard a voice behind him. "Drop the rifle, Warren." Eli turned slowly. A man in a dark coat stood by the trees, holding a revolver. His hat shadowed his face, but the badge glinting on his chest caught the lantern light. U.S. Marshal. Behind him, 6 riders emerged from the dark. "You Eli Warren?" the man asked. "Who's a skin?" "Marshal Clay Harlow. We're looking for a runaway, young native boy. Dangerous." Eli laughed bitterly. "Dangerous? He's a child." Harlow's jaw tightened. "That boy ain't what you think. He's property of the government." "Property?" Eli spat. "He's human." The marshal motioned with his revolver. "Step aside, cowboy. He's got something inside him that don't belong to your world." "What are you talking about?" Harlow didn't answer. He only nodded to one of his men, a soldier carrying a long steel case. The kind Eli had seen back in the war, the kind that held more than rifles. Eli's hand twitched near his gun. "You ain't talking him." "Then you're making yourself a traitor," Harlow said coldly. Before Eli could blink, a shot rang out. A bullet tore through his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Kaya screamed from the trees. "No!" A sudden gust of wind ripped through the clearing, strong enough to snuff out the lantern. The hum returned, louder this time. The ground trembled beneath them. Then the marshal's horse reared, screaming, as a beam of light burst from the soil, white and searing. The men stumbled back, shouting. Kaya stood at the center of it, eyes glowing faintly. And on his arm, the sun mark began to burn again, this time from within. Eli could barely see through the dust. The light pouring from the ground burned white, brighter than lightning, throwing the men into chaos. Horses screamed and bolted into the trees. The marshal shouted orders no one could hear over the roar. Then, as suddenly as it came, the light went out. The clearing plunged into silence, the kind that hurts your ears. The ground smoked faintly where the light had been, and the smell of scorched metal filled the air. Kaya was on his knees, shaking. The mark on his arm glowed dull red, like a coal cooling in ash. Eli staggered up, his shoulder throbbing. He reached the boy, pulled him into his arms. "You're all right, son. You're all right." The marshal and his men were gone, vanished. Their tracks ended at the ring of blackened soil. The steel case lay open in the dirt, empty. Eli dragged it back to the ranch at dawn, his mind running in circles. Inside the case, he found what looked like a map, water-stained and half-burned. It showed a series of sites scattered across the frontier, circles drawn around mountain ranges, canyons, rivers, each one marked with the same sun symbol, and written across the top in faded ink, Project Dawnfire. He didn't sleep that night. He sat by the window with a bandage on his shoulder, staring out at the horizon. Every few minutes he'd glance at Kaya, who slept fitfully by the fire, mumbling in his own language. When the first light of morning touched the land, Eli's heart froze. Far out across the plain, in the direction of the ridge, figures moved. Not a handful this time, but dozens, then scores. A line of riders stretched as far as he could see, the early sun flashing off spears and rifles. Kaya woke with a start. He ran to the window and whispered, "Toka Sura, they come." Eli loaded his rifle. "Then we stand." He didn't know if they were soldiers, tribesmen, or something else entirely. He only knew they came for the boy, and that he wasn't about to hand him over. The first riders reached the far fence by noon. They didn't attack. They just sat their horses in silence, hundreds of them, faces painted, some carrying banners stitched with that same burning sun emblem. Between them rode men in uniform, army coats without insignia, their hats pulled low. One of them raised a hand and called out, "Eli Warren, you have something that belongs to us." Eli stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. Kaya stood beside him, small and shaking but defiant. "You want him?" Eli shouted. "You tell me what you did to him first." The man on horseback hesitated. "That child is carrying something our world isn't ready for. Let us take him, and you'll live." Eli spat in the dirt. "You'll have to take him over my dead body." The riders stirred. For a moment it seemed the whole world held its breath. Then Kaya spoke softly, almost to himself. "They will burn everything." And the wind began to rise again, whirling dust and ash around them. The hum deep under the earth returning, slow, steady, unstoppable. The wind whipped across the plains like a living thing, carrying dust, the smell of sagebrush, and something metallic, like blood in the air. Hundreds of riders waited just beyond the fence, unmoving, as if the sun itself had frozen them in place. Eli crouched low on the porch, rifle tied in his hands. Kaya stood beside him, trembling but staring north toward the riders. The sun mark on his arm glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with that low, underground hum. "You feel that?" Eli asked. Kaya nodded. "They come, but they fear him too." The first rider shifted. Then another, and another. Their horses pawed the ground nervously, hooves kicking up dust clouds that glimmered in the early light. Eli's heart pounded. He could count them, maybe 100 at first, then more than 200. One of the uniformed men rode forward, his coat flapping in the wind. "Eli Warren, step down from that porch. Hand over the boy." Eli's voice was steady, but every nerve screamed. "He's not yours. He's a child, and you've already burned too many of his friends." The man laughed, a sharp, hollow sound. "Friends? This is bigger than you, cowboy. Bigger than all of us." Kaya whispered something Eli didn't understand, then placed his small hand on Eli's shoulder. The glow from the mark on his arm flared, brighter than the rising sun. Suddenly, a shockwave pulsed from the boy, knocking Eli off his feet. Dust and sand swept across the ranch, tearing at the porch boards. The riders stumbled, some thrown from their horses. A few shields and rifles flew into the air, spinning like rag dolls. Eli scrambled to his feet, staring at Kaya. The boy's eyes were glowing now, amber like molten fire. His small hands lifted, trembling, and the ground around him cracked, the earth splitting in jagged lines that ran toward the approaching riders. "Run!" Eli shouted. But Kaya didn't move. The shockwave hit the first row of riders, throwing them into the dirt. Horses screamed. Uniformed men were hurled into the air. A roar, part wind, part something unearthly, echoed across the plains. And then Eli saw it. The riders behind the first rows stopped moving entirely, as if frozen. Some were still in the air, suspended by that invisible force emanating from the boy. Kaya looked at Eli, voice calm but trembling. They were meant to take me. But they didn't know I could fight back." Eli's mind raced. What are you?" The boy didn't answer. Instead, he pointed north, toward a distant canyon. The hum under the ground intensified. The sun mark burned bright, illuminating the cracks in the earth beneath them. From the fissures, pale, ghostly forms began to emerge, shapes that seemed like men, then beasts, and then something entirely alien. They rose silently, like shadows that had been waiting for centuries, their eyes glowing faintly in the morning light. The riders screamed, some firing guns into the air, others trying to flee. But the forces emerging from the earth were faster. They surrounded the riders, dragging some into the fissures before they could even react. Eli grabbed Kaya. "We're getting out of here. Now." But the boy shook his head. "No. They need to see." Eli followed his gaze. Beyond the ridge, hundreds more riders waited, their eyes wide with fear. And above them, a dark shape loomed, something that shouldn't exist in the open sky, massive and impossibly fast, circling as if hunting. Kaya's mark flared brighter than ever. A wave of energy pulsed outward, and the earth swallowed the first line of attackers completely. Screams, shouts, and the cracking of bones echoed across the plains, then ceased abruptly. The remaining riders stopped, frozen by the sheer power radiating from the boy. Eli felt it in his chest, raw, uncontrollable energy, older than the land itself. He looked down at Kaya. You're not just a boy." Kaya nodded, small and defiant. "I am what they tried to make me. I am what they feared, and they will never take me again." By midday, the ranch was silent. The ground bore deep cracks and scorched marks where the energy had erupted. Hundreds of riders had vanished, dead, frozen, or dragged into the fissures. Eli looked around, awe and fear warring in his chest. And then he saw the distant horizon. Figures were moving again, far off in the mountains. But this time, they didn't come on horseback. They were walking, slowly, deliberately, hundreds more. Kaya turned to Eli. "They are coming. All of them. But now we are ready." Eli's hand rested on his rifle, heart pounding. "Then we fight. Together." The boy raised his hands, the sun mark glowing brighter than ever. The earth trembled, and the hum under the plains became a roar that could be heard for miles. And as the first wave of the army reached the outer fence, Eli realized that the simple act of saving a lost child had changed everything. The West would never be the same. The riders froze as the ground erupted, the sun mark on Kaya's arm blazing like a beacon. Hundreds of warriors, human and something else entirely, now surrounded Eli's ranch. And in the center, a small boy stood, unstoppable, burning with a power that the world could not contain. The battle for the plains had begun. The first wave of riders froze in place as the fissures widened, swallowing horses, men, and rifles alike. Eli's mind reeled. He had fought in skirmishes before, seen death and destruction. But this was something entirely beyond human comprehension. Kaya's sun mark burned brighter, casting shadows across the plains. Eli felt the energy in his bones, a force that bent the air and cracked the soil. He realized the boy was no longer just a child. He was a living weapon, a being shaped by fear, pain, and something older than the frontier itself. From the mountains, more figures appeared. Not soldiers this time, but shadowy forms riding horses that moved faster than any animal Eli had ever seen. They didn't approach recklessly. They moved with purpose, a disciplined wave of hundreds, each rider's face painted with the same sun symbol that marked Kaya. Eli gritted his teeth. "So that's it. They've been tracking him all this time." Kaya's voice was calm, yet carried the weight of ages. "They tried to make me, but I survived. They feared me, and now they come for revenge. They will not stop. Not until I am theirs, or the world is burned." Eli swallowed hard. He looked around the ranch, the fences splintered, the barn scorched, the ground torn by Kaya's emerging power. The boy's small hands glowed, veins of fire coursing through them. Eli realized then, survival alone wouldn't be enough. They would have to fight, but against what? Men? Machines? Something older than memory itself? The first uniformed rider reached the fence. He raised a hand, calling out, "Eli Warren, step down and surrender the child. You don't understand the power he carries." Eli's answer was a steady voice, full of resolve. "He's not yours. He's a child, and if you come any closer, you'll regret it." The rider laughed, a hollow, empty sound. Then the ground around Kaya erupted. Fissures opened like teeth, swallowing the first line of attackers. Horses screamed as they fell. Dust and fire swirled, blinding everything. Eli shielded his eyes, the roar of energy drowning out even the riders' screams. When the dust cleared, Eli saw that hundreds more had been drawn to the edge of the fissures, frozen in place. Kaya's mark glowed like molten gold, pulsating, and the boy's small frame trembled with raw, uncontained power. And then it began, the revelation. From beneath the fissures, pale figures rose, soldiers and children alike, twisted and broken by experiments, remnants of Project Dawnfire. They were human, but their eyes glowed faintly, bodies contorted, powers half-realized. Kaya raised a hand, and they paused, as if recognizing him as both leader and kin. Eli stumbled back, horrified. You're controlling them? Kaya's voice rang clear, steady, commanding. Not controlling, remembering. They were taken, just like me. But they are mine now, and the ones who made them will pay. From the mountains, more riders surged forward. This time, Eli saw the truth. Uniformed soldiers riding alongside native warriors, hundreds strong, all bearing the sun symbol. They had come for Kaya, to reclaim what they believed was theirs. Eli looked down at the boy. We can't hold them all, son. Kaya's eyes burned with fire. We don't have to. They fear what I am. The plains themselves will rise if they try. And then the earth shook again. From every fissure, every crack, every shadowed canyon, more figures emerged. Ghosts of the past, children, warriors, soldiers, all drawn to Kaya, all empowered by his existence. Horses reared, men screamed, and the wind carried a sound that was neither animal nor human, a roar that shook the heart of the plains. The riders faltered. The army's ranks broke. Hundreds tried to flee, but the fissures spread like a living thing, swallowing them whole. Others were paralyzed, caught in the radiant field emanating from Kaya. Eli's chest ached. He had never seen power like this, never seen a child capable of bending the very land. And yet, he realized something darker. If Kaya could destroy the army with a thought, what else could he destroy? What else would they fear in him? Kaya turned to Eli. I do not want to hurt them, Eli, but they will not take me again, and those who try will vanish. The plains fell silent. Hundreds of riders had been destroyed or trapped. The fissures slowly closed, leaving charred ground and twisted horses behind. But from the north, a new army appeared, more numerous, more disciplined, carrying weapons Eli didn't recognize. Eli looked at Kaya, whose mark had dimmed slightly, the boy exhausted. They just keep coming, Eli said. Kaya placed a small hand on Eli's shoulder. Then we show them the West has changed forever. And in that moment, Eli understood. Saving the boy had unleashed a force older than the frontier, older than man himself. By protecting Kaya, he had drawn the attention of hundreds, maybe thousands, of hunters, warriors, and soldiers, all waiting for the day the boy could no longer be contained. The sun rose higher, painting the plains in gold. Hundreds of riders now surrounded the ranch, forming a vast, unbroken ring. The battle for the boy, and for the land itself, had just begun. The morning air was thick with tension, the kind that presses down on your chest and makes every heartbeat thunder. Hundreds of riders stretched across the horizon, their horses stamping, eyes fixed on the small ranch like predators circling prey. Eli Warren stood on the porch, rifle in hand, sweat running down his face. Beside him, Kaya's small frame glowed faintly with the remaining power of the sun mark. The boy's voice was calm but firm. They are not soldiers, not entirely. They are hunters, and not all are alive. Eli's stomach twisted. What do you mean? Kaya gestured toward the ridge. Project Dawnfire, they experimented on children. They burned some to control the power within. Some survived like me, but others, they became shadows. Ghosts of fear. They obey those who hurt them, until they see me. Then they remember who they were. Eli's eyes widened. You're telling me, half of them aren't human? The boy nodded, his small hand pressed to the burning mark. Some are dead, but they walk. They serve the ones who burned them. That's why they came. From the ridge, a figure rode forward, larger than the rest, mounted on a black stallion, face hidden by shadow. Uniformed, but unlike the others, his coat adorned with strange symbols. The sun symbol burned into his chest. Eli Warren, the man called out. His voice carried across the plains like a whip. Step down. Hand over the boy. You cannot stop what you do not understand. Eli gritted his teeth. He's not yours. He's a child. The man laughed, sharp and cruel. Not a child. A weapon. And we are the makers. Hand him over, and perhaps your life will be spared. Kaya stepped forward, small but unyielding. I am not yours. Never again. The earth beneath the riders trembled. Fissures cracked open, snaking toward the front lines. Horses reared and stumbled. Some riders were thrown into the jagged cracks. The figures that had once been human now surged forward, glowing faintly. Children, soldiers, warriors, all drawn to Kaya, all empowered by his presence. The black-coated man raised a hand, and the remaining riders formed a disciplined wall, weapons raised, but the air itself seemed to push against them. Eli saw them falter, unease rippling through the ranks. Kaya's voice rang out, not just spoken but felt, vibrating through the plains. You took everything from us. Our names, our families, our lives. But you cannot take me. You cannot make me what I am not. The ground shuddered violently. The fissures widened, swallowing horses, rifles, and men. The black-coated figure screamed, his voice lost in the roar of the earth. Eli watched as hundreds of riders vanished, dragged into the fissures, swallowed by the power Kaya had unleashed. But the man on the black stallion remained, shielded somehow. Kaya turned to Eli, exhaustion in his eyes. He is different. The one who made me. The one who knows how to control the fire. Eli's jaw tightened. Then we end it. Now. The boy raised both hands. The sun mark flared like a miniature sun. A wave of light and energy rippled across the plains, bending metal, cracking wood, and flattening the ranks that still stood. The black-coated man was thrown from his horse, but landed on his feet, shielded by something Eli could not see. You cannot win, the man shouted. I am the architect. Kaya's voice was steady. And I am the child you burned. I am what you feared. And I am free. With that, the boy slammed his hands into the ground. The final fissure opened like the maw of a giant beast. The black-coated figure, his soldiers, the remnants of the army, all were pulled down. Eli watched in stunned silence as the earth swallowed them, the sound echoing like the world itself crying. When the dust settled, the plains were silent. Horses and men were gone. The earth had healed, leaving the ranch standing in a ring of scorched but quiet land. Eli fell to his knees, exhausted. Kaya approached him, small hands trembling but steady. It is over for now. Eli looked around. Hundreds of riders had once surrounded the ranch. Now, not a single figure remained. He placed a hand on Kaya's shoulder. You're safe. For now. But the world, they will never stop hunting what they do not understand. The boy looked north toward the mountains, eyes still glowing faintly. Then we will be ready. We are no longer just children or cowboys. We are the guardians of what they cannot take. Eli nodded, a heavy weight on his chest. He knew the West had changed forever, and he knew that saving a lost child had unleashed something neither man nor nature could ever contain. The sun rose higher, painting the ranch gold. The plains were empty now, but the scars remained, a reminder of the hundreds who had come, the hundreds who had sought to claim the boy, and the power that had protected him. And in the center of it all, a small boy stood, glowing with a fire that would never be extinguished. The West would never forget the day Eli Warren saved a lost native boy, the day hundreds came to take him and vanished into the earth itself. The plains were quiet now, but the silence was heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. Eli Warren stood on the porch of his ranch, his shoulders still bandaged, the rifle lying across the boards at his feet. The sun shone harsh and golden, revealing every scar in the earth where the fissures had opened, every splintered fence post, and every scorched patch of soil. Dust hung in the air, sparkling faintly, as if holding onto the memory of the chaos that had erupted just hours before. He looked at Kaya, standing a few feet away, small but resolute, the glowing mark on his arm now dim, but still pulsing faintly with latent energy. The boy's hair was matted, dirt streaked across his face, but his eyes held the same fire Eli had seen the moment he found him lost and starving in the desert. That fire, the power, the fury, the defiance, had saved them both and destroyed hundreds who had once threatened to take the child away. Eli remembered the beginning. The boy, trembling, alone, ribs showing, a burned mark etched into his arm. And now, he was more than a boy. He was a force older than the land, a child who had survived human cruelty and harnessed it, transforming fear into power beyond comprehension. Eli's heart ached, pride, awe, and fear all tangled together. The ranch was in ruins, but it was theirs. For now, the barn was charred, fences torn apart, the stables half collapsed. Dust and ash lay across every surface, remnants of the battle that had erased the hundreds of riders who once surrounded them. Eli walked carefully across the land, scanning for signs of life. He found horses buried in shallow fissures, some burned beyond recognition, others missing entirely. Ghosts of the army that had tried to claim Kaya lingered in memory alone. Kaya followed him silently. His voice, when it came, was soft but steady. They will return. Eli shook his head, crouching to examine the cracks in the earth. Son, they came in hundreds. They were soldiers, hunters, men, children, something else. They've been trying to take you your whole life. And you defeated them. The boy nodded. I survived. I am not what they made me. But they fear me, and that fear will always bring them back. Eli exhaled, running a hand over his face. I don't know if I can protect you forever, not from what they are or what they might become. Kaya's eyes glimmered with a mixture of defiance and weariness. You don't have to. I am ready. Eli looked at the distant mountains, still faintly hazy with smoke from the last battle. Ready? You're still a child. But I am also what they feared, Kaya said, gesturing to the faint glow of the sun mark on his arm. I am the witness, the survivor, the one who remembers everything. Eli remembered the first time he saw the mark, a burned sun on the boy's arm, a symbol of cruelty, ritual, and something older than human memory. He remembered the experiments, Project Dawnfire, the hidden camps, the children burned and twisted to harness what they could not control. He remembered the army men, the uniformed riders, the black-coated marshal who had declared the boy property of the government. He also remembered Sam Pike, his loyal, stubborn hired hand, found hanging in the barn. He remembered the shock waves from Kaya, the fissures opening under the riders, the spectral forms of children and soldiers rising from the earth, half alive, half ghost, drawn to Kaya's power. Eli's chest tightened as he realized the full weight of what had happened. By saving Kaya, he had unleashed forces that the world was never ready to confront. Hundreds had surrounded the ranch that day, and almost all were gone, swallowed by earth, frozen by power, or pulled into the shadows of the boy's uncontrollable energy. The plains had become a battlefield not only of men, but of something primal, ancient, and unforgiving. Kaya knelt beside a fissure, touching the cracked earth with trembling fingers. They were taken, tortured, burned, like me. But now they remember, and they obey me, if only in part. They are no longer hunters, not until they try again. Eli's hand rested on the boy's shoulder. Do you think they will ever stop? Kaya's eyes flicked north, toward the mountains where the army and the hunters had first emerged. They will not. The world fears what I am, but I will survive. And those who come, they will learn the price of fear. The sun climbed higher. Eli looked over the ranch, over the land he had built, over the child he had saved. Every memory of the past, the cavalry, the wars, the dead he had buried, the battles he had survived, all led to this moment. He understood now that the West itself had changed, that the plains carried the echo of Kaya's power, and that the hundreds who had once surrounded his ranch would forever be a warning to anyone who tried to claim what was not theirs. Kaya stood, small hands clenched, mark glowing faintly. He looked at Eli, then beyond him at the horizon. We are not alone, he said, and we never will be. The plains, the earth, they are awake, and they will protect us. Eli nodded, gripping his rifle. Then we fight. Together. For weeks, they rebuilt the ranch, but every night the hum beneath the earth reminded them that the plains remembered the battle, that the hundreds who had tried to take Kaya were only a prelude to what might come. Eli trained, prepared, and watched over Kaya, teaching him what he could about survival and the ways of men, even though he knew the boy was far beyond any lesson he could give. As months passed, travelers came cautiously near the ranch, whispering rumors of what had happened, the boy with the sun mark, the hundreds who vanished, the fissures that scarred the plains. Some came seeking answers, some seeking revenge, and some seeking the power that radiated from Kaya, though none dared approach when they sensed the force that lay in wait. Eli often thought of Sam Pike, of the soldiers, and of every life lost or changed that day. He carried their memory with him, and he carried Kaya, the boy who had survived the worst, who had become more than human, more than child, a force that would forever alter the West. And as the sun set over the plains, casting long shadows across the ranch, Eli knew this truth. Hundreds had surrounded them that morning, hundreds had tried to take Kaya, and all had failed. The boy, once lost and starving in the desert, had become the guardian of a secret too powerful for the world to comprehend. And Eli Warren, the cowboy who saved him, had witnessed a power that would haunt the West forever. The plains were quiet, for now, but the wind carried whispers, whispers of the hundreds who had come, the fire that had risen from the earth, and the child who had survived. The West had changed, and it would never be the same again.